Oh, okay, got it. Okay. So the story is told from 2 points of view. I wrote the character of Malena, who is a Puerto Rican Hurricane Maria evacuee. She's just moved to Florida. She's kind of lost her voice after the hurricane, and she's trying to find her footing. And then she gets a really bad sunburn on her back, and she goes to school without a bra. As a result, she ends up in detention. In the process, she meets Marie's character Ruby, who is a senior, and she's more experienced with the world of student protests and social justice. So Ruby's character intervenes, and she immediately tells Malena that what's happened to her is not fair, and that they should do something about it.
Yeah, and so the story is really, for us, it's an exploration about one thing it's an exploration of is really the challenges of living with big expectations, learning to live up to some expectations, learning to defy expectations about who you are, and learning to sort of become who you are in spite of the expectations. It's a story about building relationships, whether those relationships be friendship or romance, across very real differences, but not insurmountable differences. And mostly it's about learning how and when to claim your voice and to get big and to get out there. And just as important, how and when to step back and to listen. And so this for us was really an exploration of feminism, allyship, and becoming an accomplice, and really the intersectional piece of feminism. Yes. So as people who care deeply about intersectional feminism, we wanted to try and write a story that was super accessible and really kind of, a friendship story. There's romance in there, but that dealt with some pretty heavy, pretty challenging issues about how to be feminists who recognize and honor intersectionality.
Yeah, I mean, we're the intersectional feminism part of this book is what really lit the fire and kept us going through some very difficult conversations as we were co-authoring and writing this book. Because when we looked at the other books, that were out there, comparable titles about dress coding, about, feminist novels, they were all written from a very wide gaze. We could not find a YA, dress code title that really tackled intersectional feminism head on. What does it mean to be a feminist when you're a woman or a girl of color, right? When you are a member of a marginalized community, when you belong to a community with very traditional conservative values, what does that look like? So we wanted to explore all these things, and we wanted to do it from 2 points of view, right? From the Puerto Rican girl from a very conservative family, and a white girl from a very privileged upbringing, and bridge those two voices to a place where they could have those difficult conversations. And, when we were writing, Marie and I would sit across table or desk or wherever or coffee shop, wherever we were, and we would have the conversations with each other. We would go back and forth, volleying with the dialogue, try to get it just right. And some instances were really hard,
If we didn't already have, I think we have a long friendship, and we've been critique partners for about a dozen years. And I think if we didn't have the foundation of that, this would have been a really almost impossible book to write. But because of the love and the trust that we have for each other, and we're both really pretty deeply rooted in compassion as a value, I think we were able to write a story that delves into some super tricky issues. Super complicated issues.
Yeah, and it was important for us as well that at a time where everybody is so focused on calling each other out, we wanted this to be a story about calling each other in, right? About coming together in love, compassion, understanding, allyship, and figuring out how can we have these difficult conversations in community, in a way that we are growing our sphere of not only of positive influence in the world, but also lifting each other up versus tearing each other apart, right? So let's read a little bit of the book. I'm going to read from the first chapter. This is Malena's voice that starts the book. Malena, chapter 1. I'm not a superstitious person, but my abuela Milagro says catastrophes come in threes. I'm starting to believe she's onto something. First came this beast of a hurricane called Maria, which caused our island more devastation that we can mentally process. Mommy and I are now stranded in the swampland that is Florida, our second stroke of bad luck. The only upside is I get to hang out with my cousins every day instead of just once or twice a year. And now, because irony is Lady Fortuna's weapon of choice, thanks to those very cousins, my mala suerte trifecta may be complete. How do I avert this third disaster looming over me before it wrecks what's left of my life? I reach for my medal of La Virgencita hanging around my neck, which abuela says protects me from the mal de ojo. A cold chill runs down my spine as I step back from the full-length mirror attached to my bedroom door. I don't know which side is more pitiful, my reflection or the mishmash of secondhand furnishings around me, mostly donations from a local church drive for Maria evacuees. This is bad. The skin on my back has gone from brown to angry red, the color of a Caribbean lobster that's just been pulled from a pot of scalding water. It turns out bathing suits make for terrible landscaping apparel. Yesterday, after my cousin Zoraida talked back Tia Lorna one too many times, we, because Tia Lorna sees me as an accessory to my cousin's shenanigans, were forced to clean and mow their backyard. All afternoon, I pruned bushes while the sun literally licked my back. My cousin Carlos went shirtless too, but somehow he managed to get a great tan. It's so annoying that guys don't have to worry about their boobs hanging out or about how to fall asleep if you can't lie on your back. I bet Carlos slept like a baby last night. Not me. I barely slept at all. Lying on my stomach was pure torture thanks to the two mountains that have recently risen from my chest. No one told me that double D really stands for doble dolor, double the pain. Where did these things come from anyway? Besides Zoraida, I don't know many other 15-year-olds that have to shop for big bust bras. My abuela says the Rosario women were all blessed with their precious gift of tetas grandes, a clear sign of our female strength, she reassures me. Wear them proudly, she loves to say, but this morning they feel more like an enormous inconvenience than a gift. So Marie's going to read a little bit from
I'll just read a little from
Ruby's
first chapter, give you a sense of her voice.
There's lots of talk of boobs in this book.
And even a bra burn.
Yes, and even a bra burn. So if you enjoy good bra burning, this book is for you.
Chapter 2, Ruby. Because it's Monday and Mondays inevitably suck, I'm sitting in Mrs. Markowitz' history class stressing. I've just started my period and I'm 90% positive I don't have a tampon. I lean down to slowly unzip my backpack, trying not to make too much noise since she's showing a film. I rifle around for a while, checking all the pockets, nothing but pencil stubs, old gum wrappers, and a broken "This is what a feminist looks like" button that I used to wear all the time, way back when I lived in Seattle. Who knew I still had that thing? I pick up the button to inspect it and feel a sharp pinprick against my thumb. Ouch. A small drop of blood is forming. I should have known that looking back into my past would hurt. Life was easier in Seattle. Was it better? I'm not sure, but definitely simpler. I lean forward to whisper to Nessa, "Hey, do you have a tampon?" She shakes her head. Joe and I switched to goddess cups. Why does it come as no surprise to me that Joe and Nessa use goddess cups? Nessa and Joe are basically attached at the hip. They've been dating forever, and they're so deeply connected that my best friend Topher and I joke that they're starting to look alike. If we didn't love them both so much, we'd probably massively resent their unattainably perfect romance. Ick, I fake shudder. Tried the goddess cup once, never again. Nessa shrugs. Your body, your choice. She turns to look at me. But you know you're slowly poisoning yourself, right? Mrs. Marquardt stands up. Ruby, Nessa, is there an issue? Sort of, I reply, unsure whether this constitutes an issue. Clearly, though, it's nearing emergency status. I need to go to the nurse. Are you sick, Ruby? Mrs. Marquardt asks. No need to worry, I assure her. I just started my period and I don't have a tampon. Predictably, half the class snickers and a couple of girls slump down in their seats. You know, Topher calls out from the back of the room, if the administration would provide free tampons in bathrooms, Ruby wouldn't need to interrupt class. This is why I love you, Topher. Topher Pettis is a force of nature. I'll never forget how he swooped in to save me at approximately 4:13 p.m. on the afternoon of my 10th day at Orange Grove High. If I may, Mrs. Marquardt, Topher continues, toilet paper is seen as an essential, right? The administration doesn't expect us all to carry around our own rolls. That's enough, Topher, Mrs. Marquardt announces in a voice that reveals both her frustration with Topher's frequent proclamations and her guarded respect for his insights. Come get a hall pass, Ruby. Topher always vows it was me who saved him, but we both know the truth.
So thank you. If you have, I'm not sure I can see the chat. Let me see if there's any questions for us. Would love to take the time that it's left. Oh, here we go. The time that is left to answer any questions.
Yeah, Mayra and Marie have to leave. So if anybody has a question, just quickly put it in the chat, or actually you can unmute yourself and ask it.
Yes, unmute yourself. We'd love to say hi.
So you said you're going now to talk about co-writing. Was that, like you said, it was a challenge, but you were able to successfully come out with the book? Are you doing it again?
Yes, we actually were writing a Romeo and Juliet retail set in the mountains of Puerto Rico that I am so excited about.
Dude, great research trips.
Yes.
Yeah, so we have a 2-book contract with this book, and then we're also working on another project together. So really embrace the co-authoring.
Yeah.
Super fun, and we've learned a lot about each other and about the process.
Nora, you can unmute yourself, Nora.
Okay, there we go. So quickly wanted to ask you, how long ago did you meet, and how quickly after meeting did you all start co-writing?
So we met in 2009 at a writers conference. We were the only 2 people at a table in this huge event for author pitching and critique partnering and all that stuff. And
super awkward.
Yes.
Super awkward.
So I picked Marie. I walked in and they told me sit wherever you want, and I picked Marie was there sitting by herself, and I'm like, I'm just gonna sit with her because I'll get more time, one-on-one time. And we just clicked right away. It was totally love at first sight. We just, within 10 minutes of talking, Marie was like, do you want to be my critique partner? And
so, yeah, we were both, we weren't agented. We were very early in our process.
Very early.
All I knew was I needed a critique partner.
Yeah.
And so Mayra showed up in my life. But we didn't start writing. I mean, we critiqued each other for, through several of our solo authored projects. And then we didn't get a chance to start writing together until
2018. Until 2018, we started working Does My Body Offend You? And we were in between contracts for other books, and we thought it was a good time. So we kind of just decided to go for it. We didn't even tell our agents about it. We were like, we're just working on something. We'll let you know. We'll let you guys know when it's ready. We just wanted to see if it was going to work out and what the process it's going to be. We're teaching this class at the Highlights Foundation tonight. It's the second night, but we heard from people that attended the first night how hard it is for a lot of people to co-author, because they can't find a system that works. There's also the aspect of communication. How do you edit each other? And we tell people it requires a lot of trust. You really creatively, you're putting yourself in somebody else's hands, and if the trust is not there, it's very hard to do that. I mean, Marie and I, we heavily edit each other's work, and we are actually we're better because of it. You know, and we push each other as well. You know, I feel like I have grown with Does My Body Offend You specifically. Like I grew as a writer by leaps and bounds because Marie was there, pushing me along, you know, moving us in different direction. I feel like we do that for each other.
Yeah, and I did too. So it's been quite a journey, a really wonderful journey. And I hope that we, you know, part of it is just building the right structures. And then part of it is just this deep trust and compassion for each other when you make mistakes. So, and that's interesting because it's kind of the same values that we reflect in our written word, that we care about, we really want to share in our novels too. So
yeah, and it's, you know, and it's really nice to be able to put out a book like Does My Body Offend You into the world, where something like intersectional feminism is explored from 2 points of view, right? That you get different perspectives, and it leads to wonderful conversations from people from different backgrounds coming to the table. So yeah, I mean, I kind of see it as a bridge book.
Yeah, it's a very important topic too, I think, especially middle school
timely.
girls. They need, you know, they need to read more stories like this, I think. So thank you. Thank you, ladies, for coming. Thank you very much. We look forward to reading your book, and we hope to see you again.
Thank you so much for having us. Have a wonderful
evening.
Okay, you're welcome. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Very good. So we'll go on to our second author. Our second author tonight is Julissa Arce, and she is the author of You Sound Like a White Girl, The Case of Rejecting Assimilation. Hi, Julissa, welcome.
Hi, everyone. Good to see you all.
Say a little bit about the book before the reading. I'm sorry to cut you off. Go ahead.
Oh, it's okay. I was just going to say hi to Mirta. Mirta and I went to college together. We have not seen you in a very long time, so it's really good to see your face. So if it's okay, I actually wanted to read and then tell you about the book. So I'm just going to
whatever makes you comfortable.
Go into it. Okay. This is from a chapter called The Lie of English. When I let go of my white girl voice, I was reminded by my Wall Street bosses that certain colloquialisms, a word I still have a hard time pronouncing, were not professional. I was dumbfounded to learn that screaming fuck while pounding the desk was acceptable behavior, but saying yo was not. I have a joyful laugh that fills any room. The volume of my voice offended just as much as my manner of speech. After my boss told me I was too loud, I learned to tame my laughter. This was a reminder that taking up space will make others uncomfortable because they only want to see us quiet and thankful. The first time one of my Goldman Sachs clients asked me to bring him coffee because he mistook me for the assistant, I was embarrassed for him. I felt like I was the one who had to make up for his racism, the burden falling on me to make him comfortable. And isn't that twisted? I told myself he made an honest mistake since I looked so young. The truth was much uglier. Having a Mexican woman advise him on how to protect and grow his precious money was not something that this white billionaire was used to. After that occasion, I never went to a client meeting unless I spoke to them on the phone first, using my white girl voice, of course. Assimilation forces us to erase or at least hide who we really are by dangling an illusion of success in front of our faces. I figured that if they could first hear my ideas, then they would know that I was a smart and capable investment professional. But even if they didn't ask me to serve them food and drinks, there were other subtle ways they reminded me that my white voice didn't fool them. Comments that I was so well-spoken and my speech so eloquent served as reminders that in their mind, someone like me wasn't supposed to have a mastery of words. English, no matter how many of its words I mastered or how much of its magical power I harnessed, did not protect me from the powerful race dynamics that labeled me foreign. A white voice did not make me American. My English still trembled with a desire for acceptance. Assimilation, whether linguistic, cultural, aesthetic, or otherwise, always has more steps to complete. As you master one, more appear. I honed my speech to sound like the popular white girls in my school, like the blonde all-American girls I saw in movies and on TV shows. I stood in front of a mirror, saw my brown reflection, and tried to imagine the girl speaking back to me was someone white, someone whose words brought her pride and confidence. I cry when I think of that, Julissa. I want to hold her and tell her one day she'll laugh when she texts her friends, I am going star crazy. And they write back, Comadre, ¿qué es star crazy? Like stir crazy, but more galactic? She'll respond, we can all be star crazy with a little herb from the earth and roll on the floor laughing so hard her tummy will hurt. My husband pokes fun of me whenever I make use of the wrong idiom or use the incorrect word in a sentence. He finds it endearing. My friend Carlos has a running list of all the things I say wrong, and we joke about it over drinks in a pool in Palm Springs. In my accent, in my mistaken words, in my imperfect English, I have found laughter and joy. So that's the passage I wanted to read from, and I think, as you can probably tell, kind of like where the book is going. That was my Alexa. I am not talking to you. So I wrote this book, You Sound Like a White Girl, The Case for Rejection and Assimilation. And it's funny just kind of seeing people's reactions to the title, because sometimes people will laugh, or sometimes people will get really uncomfortable when they hear the title of the book. And I think that helps me to kind of know where people are with this idea that assimilation doesn't lead to belonging. So in the book, I go through some personal stories, but there's also a lot of history. It's really sort of a manifesto and a polemic, a criticism in the ways in which the United States asks immigrants and people of color to assimilate. And what they're really asking us is to be more white, because when they say American, that's in my mind, that's really what they mean. Because white equals American, and everybody else who's not white, like, we constantly have to justify our existence in this country, or we constantly have to prove that we belong through, our education, through our language, through our financial success. And I think for a long time, I was I sort of believed that. Like, I believed that if I did all of these things, if I learned how to speak English, if I got a good education, if I got a good job, that then people would see me differently. And I sort of kept having these experiences that showed me that that wasn't the case. And then when I started to sort of look back at history, like all the way back to the Mexican-American War, when the first Mexicans became US citizens at a time when only white people could become citizens, like going back that far, I understood just kind of how complex our place in this country is. And then I also talk about sort of the Latino identity, what it really means, kind of like who it benefits, where it came from, and kind of how now I see the road to belonging through reclaiming our own heritage, our own culture, our own history, our own identity, and sort of defining our identity for ourselves. So yeah, that's what the book is about. And I don't know if we're taking questions now or at the end, but I want to be respectful of the allotted time. Oh, the one last thing I'll say is that, I mean, I think that part maybe like some of the things that I said sound not very hopeful, but the book actually ends very hopeful. I sort of find that I am a very hopeful person. I am a very optimistic person, and I sort of just say that I'm just looking for answers in different places now. I'm no longer trying to spend my time convincing other people of my humanity, sort of like people who already know that I also am human like them. Like, we can chat and we can maybe disagree on some things, but like humanity has to already be sort of like a common denominator. So I'm just like looking for answers within our community rather than trying to find acceptance somewhere else.
So after having written this book, did you find answers for things that some
Yeah.
questions you had?
Yeah, I did. There was a lot of answers. I think one big question that I had was like, where were we? Because in school growing up, all of the history that I learned didn't really include Mexicans or like other Latinos. And so that was kind of a big question that I had, was like, where did we go to school during segregation? What fountain did we drink from? Like, I wanted to know more about the Mexican-American War, because that was such a defining moment for American history. And I think a lot of people sort of understand that the US was built on the slavery, the enslavement of Africans, the colonization, the genocide of indigenous people. But I think like a third pillar that is often overlooked is the colonization of Mexico during the Mexican-American War. And so I wanted to understand that more. And as I said, just even understanding that Mexicans became citizens at a time when only white people could become citizens gave us this privilege that only white people had. And I think it sort of fooled us into thinking that we had the same rights as white people, like all the way back then. So yeah, it helped me to understand a lot of things. And also it really helped me to see the beauty of within our community, and the very beautiful ways in which we have stood up for one another and for ourselves. I often think about this cheerleaders in Crystal City, Texas, who when they were in high school, they fought for their right to bear pom-poms because only one of the four cheerleaders could be Mexican American. And they let this school walkouts for 17 days, and they were able to overturn that rule. Within 2 years, the city council and the student and the school board became majority Latino. And like those stories, I feel like we were robbed because we couldn't even be inspired by those like really beautiful stories of bravery. And so yeah, I learned quite a bit, and I really hope that I took sort of all of those things that I learned through like years of research and put them in the book in a way that that is sort of like easy to follow. Yeah, thank you.
Right, Julissa, thank you. The discussion of this topic is so important, and thank you for being brave to even, write about it. I hope, are you working on anything else? Are you going to continue with this topic, or what are you doing now?
I'm definitely taking a break from these topics. This book took quite a bit out of me. I felt very exhausted after writing it and after sort of like the initial book tour. So I've just kind of been taking a break. I am going to write more, but I don't think my next book is going to be nonfiction. I kind of want to break from that. But yeah.
Okay, well, good luck with everything. And
Thank you.
you very much for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
Good. Okay, so let's welcome another duo of authors. We have Reyna Grande and Sonia Guinansaca, and they're co-authors of Somewhere We Are Human, Authentic Voices on Migration, Survival, and New Beginnings. Reyna and Sonia, welcome.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us. This is such a wonderful reading. Julissa always enjoys hearing you talk about your work and read from it. It's so interesting. I wish Mayra and Marie were still here, because mine and Sonia's experience of working together is so different from theirs, because Sonia and I didn't know each other when we started working on this book. Our agent was the one who paired us together. So it was more like an arranged marriage, right, Sonia? And so for 2 years, Sonia and I worked on this book through emails and phone calls and text messages. And we didn't meet each other in person until 2 months ago when the book came out.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So it was an interesting process, but I think what's inspiring about this experience is that it is possible to collaborate with someone on a book even though you're not in the same city, even though you may not know each other. But I think what brought us together was that we both had a similar vision of the kind of book that we wanted to create. And so I think for us, like, even though on a personal level we didn't know each other, we had a similar goal, similar experiences, and similar dreams too, in terms of that kind of anthology that we wanted.
Yeah, so it was a project of 2 years at the very beginning of the pandemic. I always often say, like, you have like a Virgo and a Gemini working together, simultaneously building like this project as we're getting to know each other. And Somewhere We're Human is a book that comes from like a labor of love. It comes from a place of really being intentional. What worked for us is that we do have a shared experience of like being formerly undocumented and wanting to lift up voices of other folks who are also either currently undocumented, asylees, formerly undocumented. And it was important for us to bring this like this collection to life during this like very achy and very tender times of us trying to make sense of like what is happening with the world and where are we at. And so Somewhere We Are Human is a collection of 41 pieces, essays, poems, and also some visual art. And
Julissa is one of our contributors.
Oh,
yeah.
nice.
And so there's so many incredible pieces in there, just like essays, poems, visual art that touches on the layeredness, the complexities, and the nuance of being undocumented, of being migrant, from the relationship with our families to like relationship to work, to love and coming into our own bodies, to our organizing and even careers. And so it was an incredible journey and project to be with Reyna and to do this and, you know, co-team this. And it came out June 7th. And so we're super excited to be part of the summer reading this. Thank you both. And I think we want to read from our editor's note so you can get a better understanding of the project itself. So yeah, I'm gonna kick it up. So dear reader, we're honored to present to you these powerful stories of resilience, tenacity, and hope. Our youngest selves never imagined putting a book like this together. A unique collection of essays, poems, and artwork by and about people like us, undocumented and formerly undocumented immigrants. Since we are part of our community that is often relegated to the margins of society, where so many of us are forced to live in the shadows and where our voices go unheard, the publication of Somewhere We Are Human is to us a dream fulfilled. This book is a celebration of the unbreakable spirit and incredible talent of our communities. We both migrated when we were very young, Reyna from Mexico and Sonia from Ecuador, and landed on opposite coasts, California and New York, respectively. We both grew up undocumented and faced similar challenges as we struggled to find our places in the United States. Luckily for us, two brown girls living in Harlem and Los Angeles, we found a sort of sanctuary in our public libraries where we discovered the power of stories and developed a fierce love of reading. Unfortunately, the books available to us too often fail to include experiences like ours. We crave narratives that spoke to our reality as immigrants and the complexity of being undocumented, stories that reflected our humanity where we felt seen and heard. To see ourselves in the pages of a book would have made us feel less alone, less othered.
With this collection, we hope to contribute to the ongoing and evolving conversation about immigration policy and justice by centering authentic stories of immigrants. Never has the need for such a book been greater, and we gave ourselves over to the writing and editing of it as if our lives depended on it. And maybe they did. After all, the creation of Somewhere We Are Human happened during a time when DACA was up for debate, during the ongoing deportation of migrants across the country and the imprisonment of people in detention centers, during an increase in anti-LGBTQ policies, during a rise of xenophobia and anti-Asian violence, during the uprising for Black lives, during an election, during a climate crisis, economic instability, and a global pandemic. At a time of so much unrest, how do we shift the nation's collective imagination about migrants towards one rooted in humanity and justice? What stories about our migrant selves and our migrant communities need to be told during these times of border militarization, mass detention, and draconian anti-immigrant legislation? These were the questions that guided us as we selected the essays, poems, and artwork you will find within these pages. You will read stories about humans who love, who have complicated relationships with family members, who are engaged in multiple social justice issues, such as climate change and reproductive and LGBTQ rights, who are figuring out their connection to their homelands and their adoptive country, who are exploring their identities, pursuing their dreams, and owning their truths.
In this collection, we wanted to go beyond the data points, the case studies or policy reports that all too often dominate mainstream discourse. The pieces of the people you will meet in these collections are never before published, first-hand accounts of lived experiences. These are authentic voices of emerging and also established writers and artists and leaders in their professions and communities. Some of us have been granted temporary protective status or lived under the DACA program. Some of us are in between status adjustments. Others are deportees in exile or are waiting for asylum approval. Some of us have green cards or are now American citizens. And some of us do not qualify for any current relief efforts because we have aged out or are waiting a court hearing, stuck in the ever increasing judicial backlog. This range was very important to us because it puts on display the settler colonial policies of immigration and the violent systems that we are all part of, against our will and sometimes complicitly. This government-made statuses cannot fully capture the reality of human lives, and the contribution the contributors in this book are trying individually and also collectively to make sense of the gray areas by revisiting our memories and learning how class, race, religion, sexuality, gender, nationality, statehood, ability, language have shaped our lived experiences in this country. We explore our internal conflict of trying to hold on to our roots while at the same time trying to fit in, of wanting to have a better life while knowing the price we must pay is too high, of living a reality that more often than not fails to meet our expectations, of having to fight again and again and again for our rights to remain and make a home here. We make art, we create, we write to make sense of it all, to heal and to make ourselves whole again.
Somewhere We Are Human is not complete. Our one book can never encompass the multitude of migrant experiences. But this book is unique in that it was created exclusively by undocumented or formerly undocumented immigrants, from the compilation, editing, writing, and art to the beautifully embroidered dandelion on the cover. Although the monarch butterfly has become a symbol of migration as an act of survival, we chose the dandelion to symbolize our journeys. Everyone loves butterflies, but the same cannot be said for dandelions, which, regardless of their beneficial properties, are considered weeds. Too often, immigrants are also seen in a negative light. Luckily, dandelion seeds are strong and adaptable. We've all seen them ground and bloom in the most unlikely places. Like the dandelion seed, with the odds stacked against us, we immigrants do our best to make new lives and continue existing wherever we land. This is why we organized the collection into 3 sections defined by the phases of the immigrant journey: migration, survival, and new beginnings. A journey not unlike that of the dandelion. The title, Somewhere We Are Human, was inspired by a line from one of Sonia's poems. It reflects the humanity of each individual who has been forced to abandon their homeland and seek a new life. Living in a country that often denies our humanity takes a toll, but this anthology is a declaration that even if we are not seen as human beings in the city, the country, the state, wherever we live, we are human everywhere, and no one can take our humanity away.
And we see this collection as an offering to our migrant community, but also to those outside wishing to know more. If you're an immigrant, we hope you see this book as a celebration of who you are. The stories within these pages make you feel seen, heard, and less alone. If you have ever left your home, either willingly or by force, we hope you join us in finding home together as we pursue a future not defined by borders. Every migrant has a story, a life, a family, a face, a voice. And like the dandelion, our stories are the seeds that carry life and offer new beginnings wherever they take root. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, thank you. We do have a question. What conversations were raised within your own families when writing this book? And did any of those opinions surprise you?
I think, well, for my piece, I had a conversation about it with my husband because the essay that's in the anthology that I wrote, I explore my childhood of poverty, living in Mexico. And I contrast that with my children's childhood of abundance, you know, growing up as US citizens, upper middle class Americans. And this is something that I grapple with a lot. And my husband is white from Wisconsin, and he grew up in, middle class. And so he doesn't see our kids' childhoods that much different. They're, you know, they're like his childhood. So I had to have a conversation with him about writing this essay because I know that, you know, I'm writing about my kids and I need to be aware that I am kind of writing about them in a way where when they grow up, they might not like reading this essay that I wrote. And so I felt a little nervous writing about this, but, you know, at the same time, I always have conversations with my children about these things, and I'm hoping that they will understand. But yeah, it's something that we always grapple with when you write personal stories, right? About how much of your own truth can you reveal while at the same time, you know, respecting other people's privacy.
Yeah, similarly, for one of my poems, I brought up the experience of my grandfather, who's still undocumented and who will never be able to adjust his immigration status because of just legal reasons. And so I'm waiting for the Spanish edition to come out so that he can grab onto, and instead of me translating to him the English version, but he actually ended up going to Barnes and Noble's. He still lives in New York City, so he went to the Midtown Barnes and Noble's and was just so ecstatic to see, you know, like our last name, our like his story reflected in that poem. And so I think over time, they've known that I do write about our family and about my experiences. And so they do expect like me writing about them. And this time it was just like a big relief for him to, in a way to like discuss like the complexities of him being undocumented and never being able to adjust his status. And what does that mean for the rest of us who may be mixed status, may have green cards at this point. But yeah.
Yeah, and I think that was a challenge for our contributors as well, because some of our contributors are still undocumented. And so for them to write about their experiences and to have their essays and poems published in a book, it was a risky thing for them too. You know, it took a lot of courage, and we were trying to be very careful as well. And the manuscript was reviewed by a lawyer. So we wanted to make sure that we were not putting our contributors in any kind of danger or affecting, you know, their applications for legal status. And there was actually one essay we had to pull because our contributor was going, you know, through some proceedings that publishing this piece was gonna jeopardize his case. And so we had to pull the essay right at the last minute.
Well, that's good. Did you find these participants, or did the publisher help you find those that are included in the book?
Yeah, so we had two phases. We had a list of contributors that we wanted to reach out to that have been established writers or known as organizers or activists, people that we definitely wanted to be part of this anthology. But we also opened up a open submissions process, and we had over 100 applications, over 100, 120, I'm forgetting the number at this point, of people who submitted.
150.
150. Submissions of folks. And again, like, we were just so honored and grateful for people taking time at the peak of the pandemic, at the very beginning, where people were still trying to make sense of COVID-19. And so these were folks who were coming from across the country, not just from like New York City or California, but were coming from like southern states and Midwest folks. And we had a couple of folks who also were like submitting from their home countries, since some of them had been deported or had decided to leave the country. And so that was very exciting for us too, because we wanted to make sure that as we talk about immigration, we're not just representing like our migrant communities who are still in the States, but also the reality of like immigration journeys where many folks are deported or decide to leave. But yes, so that we just solicit contributors and like had an open submission process.
Yeah. And one of the things that I find really special about the anthology is that we worked very hard to make sure that we didn't just capture the Latino immigrant experience, but that we try to capture the experiences of undocumented peoples from all over the world, because that is the reality, right? I mean, they come from many different countries. So we ended up featuring contributors from about 20 different countries.
Oh, interesting. And you said that the Spanish language edition's coming out soon too? That's wonderful.
Yeah, in January.
Oh, good. Congratulations.
January 2023, yeah.
We'll definitely add it to our list. I have another question here. Who wrote the proposal for the book? How did you two end up being selected?
Yeah, so our agent, well, we have an agent in common, Johanna Castillo.
Oh, yeah, we know. She's a
comadre,
right?
She's a comadre, yeah. So Johanna, I had talked to Johanna before about putting together something like this. And I'm sure Sonia, you had also talked to Johanna separately. And Johanna approached HarperCollins, and they had a talk about putting this anthology together. And Johanna thought that Sonia and I were the best editors for this book. And so we got together, we wrote a proposal, we sent it in, and HarperCollins really liked our vision for the anthology, and we got the green light. And after that, that's when we put out the call for submissions.
Good. Do you see yourselves working on another project?
I would love to do a sequel for Somewhere We Are Human Part 2, because there were so many other stories we couldn't fit in. And ever since the book came out, I've been hearing from other people who have these incredible stories from other countries that we didn't feature in the anthology. So I would love to do part 2.
Yeah. And there's always going to be like more emerging writers and visual artists and poets. And so I think that with the 150 plus applicants, we did our best to have this collection bring in as many writers. Originally, it was only going to be like maybe 20 pieces, but 20 to 30 pieces. And, you know, we just found ourselves with so many compelling essays and poems. And so we definitely have so many more contributors. And so a next volume will be amazing.
Yeah, very good. Well, thank you both, Sonia and Reyna. It's great hearing your story, and we look forward to the next copy of part 2.
Thank you, everyone. Please purchase the book. It's also available in audio as an audio book, and the Spanish edition comes out again next year in January. So thank you, everyone, for having us.
Yeah, and I'm gonna be at the San Diego Union Tribune Book Festival this Saturday talking about the anthology. So I hope you can come out.
Oh, good.
Does the voice reading for the stories and audio? You said there's an audio version.
Who's the narrator?
So we have multiple people we wanted to include as a range of folks, specifically queer, trans, non-binary narrators. And so there's a range of folks in there. And some of them are also like either migrant themselves or come from a migrant family background. So, yeah.
Reyna, you can put that date in the chat. That's talk, and you can share it. Very good. Thank you once again. Okay, so our final book for the evening. I'd like to welcome Anjanette Delgado, and she is the author of the book, Home in Florida, Latinx Writers and the Literature of Uprootedness. Welcome, Anjanette.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm the editor of the book. And well, first of all, I'm so touched. All these readings have been so incredible. I don't know, you guys, they're all on my list. Somewhere before, but definitely we have to support our books, right? We talk all the time about how certain stories don't get told, but if we don't buy them. So I'm really glad we're doing this. I want to tell you a little bit. I'll show you the book really quickly. For me, the two words more important in that cover are home and uprootedness, right? Because it's that tension that we're constantly talking about. For me, editing this book was about realizing my privilege. So realizing the obvious privilege for me as a Puerto Rican person who was born already as a citizen, supposedly. But also Florida is in its own way kind of privileged, right? Most of the immigration here was composed, or at least South Florida, I should say, most of it, not all of it, from Cubans who had a protected status for a long time. They don't anymore. And Puerto Ricans and other people who would come here with other situations. And so, you know, to talk about uprootedness from that position was really difficult for me at first, until I understood that I could see that there were people with obvious lack of privilege. Some of the stories that Sonia and Reyna are probably hearing and looking. And then there is the case of Puerto Rico, which is kind of the last colony of this hemisphere, where the lack of self-esteem, the emasculation of people who identify as male in my island has a gender violence national emergency, right? The self-hate of feeling like people give us things or we're kept, or but the reality is that even though we're citizens, we're not really full citizens, right? At the end of the day, we're racialized the same as any other Latin America, even if we do have some things are easier. So that was the biggest tension for me, and the biggest understanding that, bridging that, and then focusing on allowing people privileged and not to talk about home and uprootedness and what Julissa was talking about, that tension of belonging or not. Part of what I did before I get into the reading is that I insisted that we translate some people who don't yet write in English. Because when we talk about Latinx, we think of us, right? We have our communities, we speak English perfectly, we have education, but there are people who come from their countries and they start surviving, and they're surviving for 5, sometimes more years. And who writes when you need to live and, you know, feed your kids, and you don't even know if anybody would publish you. And the reality is that then you're not translated, because why would you be translated? Who knows you here? And so we wanted to show the entire spectrum of displacement, not displacement as the day that you become a citizen or not, but a process, like a constellation, like a jagged line, with those Latino writers who do not yet speak the language well enough to write in English, but also the ones who've been here forever and realized just now, as I realized, I'm displaced too in other ways, right? That I didn't realize. I thought I wasn't. And then the book taught me that I was. So I want to read to you just a little piece from Judith Ortiz Coffer, whom I miss every day. And it's an excerpt in the book that kind of leads into my foreword. It's called A Cruel Country. It's excerpt 68. She says, homesickness is called a sickness for a reason. It can be either brief or chronic. And when it becomes a permanent part of one's life, as it must have for my mother and perhaps my father, it turns into what has been labeled by sociologists as cultural grief or bereavement, and by my native culture as la tristeza. Judith was, of course, Puerto Rican. That is a sense of loss that does not abate. In trying to understand what my parents must have felt when they left their culture as young people, I researched cultural grief, el duelo cultural, and found a list of symptoms and behaviors familiar from our early lives on the mainland. In Spanish, the symptoms sound like a religious litany. El duelo por la familia y los amigos, el duelo por la lengua, el duelo por la cultura, el duelo por la tierra, el duelo por el contacto con el grupo étnico, el duelo por los riesgos físicos, el duelo por la pérdida del proyecto migratorio, el duelo por no poder regresar. Grief over the loss of family and friends, over the loss of the mother tongue, over the loss of culture, grief over the loss of the homeland, over the loss of contact with your ethnic group, over the fear of physical danger, grief over the loss of the original dream, and the grief of no possible return. And I'll leave it there, but she talks a lot about how even if you return, we all know it, right? You don't really, it was a time and it was a place and time, a moment, and you can't really get there. So I thought a lot about that as I was writing my foreword, and in the interest of time, I'm going to read a shortened version that LitHub was kind enough to publish earlier this year, if I can ever open that window. Okay, so it's called On the Logistics of Memory or Writing While Uprooted, and it's my definition of home. Given the choice of dozens of possible places to call home, to start over, I chose Florida. Being of mostly sound mind and body, I willingly chose to start over in the state people most love to hate, the punchline of entire late night show episodes, the vein of the country's existence. I too hate Florida, and I hate it often, hate its politics, always primed for excess, the relentless humidity, living in fear of one major hurricane or another 6 months out of every year. Mostly, I hate its flatness, mile after mile of it, flat county after flat county, not a hill in sight. But I also love Florida, love being able to find Cuban coffee, Argentinian empanadas, and Haitian griot without much effort, minutes from my home in Miami's Sahuesera, the Latinx word for the city's mostly Latinx Southwest. And I love that I get to hear so many voices. All around me, people speak with different sing-songs, like a rosary of assorted beads, a prayer composed of mixed whisperings, Puerto Rican, Colombian, Peruvian, Mexican, Salvadoran, Dominican, Cuban, more to the north and east, Haitian, and also some Polish, Italian, Romanian, more to the south, a scattering of Senegalese, South African, Indian, more Mexican. And then there's the tension for which the writer in me is so grateful. It's everywhere in every inch of this place. The heat always making something simmer between past and present, between more and less. The now and the then constantly threatening to boil over. The conflict between us and them, so sharp and so present in daily life that in 2008, the state had to change its state song because the original one was too racist for Florida. And yet the biggest source of tension here, I find incredibly, isn't always race. It's the tension between here and there. Most of the people who live here are uprooted beings, uprooted by old age, by their own health, by a nearby dictator's overreach, by hunger, by climate change, by disaster, by heartbreak. I know all this, and still I am surprised to realize, while editing an anthology, this anthology on Florida's literature of uprootedness, that I myself am not home. Decades after landing here, I am still moved by what I left. I will never again be home because home is a construction of a certain place at a certain time. Tracing my own work in both languages, I am shocked to see this is the common thread most present in it, though I have refused to see it. My own displacement of the mind, of the heart. I describe the dynamic in home in Florida in this way. Quote, we might draw 2 points on the spectrum of displacement. One located at the start on the left side of what will be an uneven line holds your recently uprooted, the soon to returns, the just arriveds, the what have I done's, souls with turmoil tattooed in indigo on the whites of their eyes, their gaze always lost, their eyelids heavy from having to look inward to find what they never imagined they'd miss this much. If they are writers, they do not write, not now. They first need a job, a physical address, a first paycheck with which to send money back home. Not now. Why write? Nobody knows them. Who would translate and publish them? It's too soon. They've had no time to create community. They are surviving, and even those rules, they are still learning. As I wrote those words, I was startled to realize that I am one of those souls, that the there I left is more a part of me than I knew. And suddenly I am an orphan, displaced, even though I own my own home while driving distance of places where everybody knows my name. But it's not enough. I will never again be home. At a certain time, I was with a particular set of people who relied or not on each other in specific ways. But I will never again be a little Puerto Rican girl sharing a home with beasts. The threat of violence always a cry away, and not just for 6 months out of every year. I will never again be a young mom of girls arriving in Miami months after Hurricane Andrew. Excuse me, this thing moved. Wide-eyed after having escaped a wave of gendered violence so bad that I once caught myself checking a dresser for fear a full-sized man had broken the bottoms of all the drawers to hide inside, ready to attack me, as had happened to other women where I lived. Within 3 months of that incident, I was gone, and my long road of uprootedness had begun. For the uprooted, a room of their own is not enough to write. Her most important tool is not paper and pen or pencil, not even place or space. It's memory. But from the moment she leaves, she is halved. Her memories are tainted by sadness, by guilt, by relief cooked with regret. Who did she leave behind? If she was forced to leave, her sadness is unbearable. If she chose to, the guilt murders her daily. She doesn't yet belong in the new place, but the old place is already dissolving, never to exist again, not exactly. Plus, forget identity. Who is she really? Her new environment knows nothing about her, just that she is a person who leaves. And so in this state of being, she tries to write. Isn't that what you do? Why, even in small measure, you left? But she can't. She doesn't yet know the mechanics of writing while uprooted. She doesn't know that first, she must craft a transitional identity. Latinx is as good a label as any, but what does it or any other identity based on origin really mean? That is why she must redefine Latinx. redefine it to mean one with roots in a country with a history of colonization, and thus the Spanish language, the Catholicism, the rage against oppression, now sharing the immigrant experience in the US with others of similar historical DNA. She has to do this if she is to reroot herself in the now, in the writing she came here to do. Now comes the hardest part. She must look back, remember, tell herself her own story, why she left, why it was the best choice, who she was, who she wants to be. Is she responsible for giving voice to those she left behind? Must she write their stories? Here's where she must look around. She is not the only one who left. There may be others better suited to tell the history of her people, of her past. What she must do above all else is honor herself, write what is in her heart, trust that her roots will show up in what she willingly gives to others, her art. Meanwhile, she will set about creating a home for now. Thinking about it in this way, it won't hurt so much when someone tells her to go back where she came from. And someone will, but she decides not to dwell on that. Instead, she writes more, gives more of herself. She contributes by creating as much value as she can and making a gift to this country out of all of it. Will all this make her any less uprooted? Probably not, but it will make it easier to write. And it's okay to be uprooted when you're a writer. Your new community has no borders. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Anja.
Thank you.
I know it's very personal also.
Yeah, I'm actually just emotional from all the layers of listening to everybody else's. I think I kind of entered into it already a little bit soft. I apologize.
No, no apologies, no. Well, thank you, ladies. It was a wonderful evening. I'd like to thank all our authors, Mayra, Marie, Julissa, Reyna, Sonia, and Anjanette. And Maria is going to close for us. Is anybody first before we have a minute? Anja, anybody have any thoughts for Anja? I know Maria's been putting everybody's web page in the chat, and we've got a lot of nice comments from the audience. So once again, thank you so much for participating. And keep writing. Your voices are so needed, and your stories too. So, Maria?
I'm here.
Okay.
Can you see me? Yes. Hi.
Yes.
We want to thank everyone again for joining us, the audience and our authors. Hang on, I'm missing something. Sorry.
That's all right.
So thank you again to everyone joining us tonight. Sonia, I sent you an email, a little chat message. Please chat me back. We just wanted to, this is a very special night for us. This is our first summer reading of our 8th annual summer reading list. And it was, as Tess said this morning, it's in celebration of the book club's quinceañero. So we're all quinceañeras, and we are very thankful that the authors could join us tonight and that all of you can join us tonight. We want to put in a special plug for our regular book club Zoom teleconference. So we have a teleconference this Monday, August 27th at 8 p.m. Eastern time. And there the book club will be interviewing authors Sylvia Vasquez Lovado. Her book In the Shadow of the Mountain is a memoir about her climb to the top of Mount Everest. And we're also going to be speaking with Adriana Herrera, author of A Caribbean Heiress in Paris, about a Dominican rum heiress who meets her match in a Scottish whiskey baron. So we're very excited about that. Visit us at www.latinolit.com. Tonight, I don't know if we had mentioned it, but we gave away copies of the books, and all of the winners have been contacted, and we will send your addresses to the authors and they will email you the books directly. We want to say thank you again to everyone. We want to wish you many hours of happy reading. of all the authors that were here tonight, of the other, 11 authors on our summer reading list, our 2 authors of the month. So happy reading. And as always, read Latino Lit. Good night, everyone.
Good night, everyone. Thank you.